The morning began like any other. A soft haze drifted over the small town, the sun barely pushing through the thin gray veil above. In the kitchen, a kettle whistled low and steady. Toast popped from the old metal toaster, slightly too brown, but acceptable. William barely noticed. He was focused on folding his son's lunch napkin into a triangle the way Luke liked. Across the room, Luke was at the table, legs swinging beneath the chair, a spoon clinking rhythmically against his cereal bowl. "You packed the chocolate one, right?" he asked without looking up. William smiled faintly. "Second pouch on the left." Luke grinned, eyes flicking up for a second. "Best dad ever." It was a small thing, ordinary and fleeting, but William tucked it away like he always did. A mental photograph. His son's toothy grin, the milk mustache, the cowlick no brush could tame. They left the house by 9:15. The grocery list had 6 items: eggs, bread, paper towels, juice boxes, garbage bags, and peanut butter. Just a normal Saturday errand. Nothing urgent. Nothing special. Luke wanted to wear his red sneakers, the ones with the Velcro strap half coming loose. William let him. Some battles weren't worth fighting. The parking lot of the Cedar Square grocery was half full. Families wandered in and out with carts. 2 elderly women chatted beside a hatchback, and a teen employee stacked baskets near the front doors. Luke grabbed one and pushed it inside like a race car. William followed, the automatic doors parting with a familiar whoosh. The smell was always the same: cold produce, floor cleaner, and faint bakery sugar. Luke tugged at his sleeve. "Can I go see if they restocked the dragon cards in the vending machines?" William looked down the left aisle, toward the glass front machines just past the exit. They were visible from the cereal section. "Close. Safe." "Okay," he said, "but stay where I can see you. I'll be 2 minutes." "Promise," Luke said, already jogging toward them. The shopping was quick. 2 minutes stretched to 3. William found the bread and moved toward the eggs. He glanced over toward the front. Luke wasn't there. Not behind the vending machines. Not next to the prize claw. Not kneeling on the floor like he sometimes did, peeking into the coin return. William frowned, stepped away from the cart. He walked toward the front, expecting to find Luke crouched or distracted. Nothing. He turned in a circle, looked past the registers, past the displays. No red sneakers, no blonde head of hair. His voice came out sharper than he meant. "Luke!" No answer. He asked the cashier. She shook her head. A customer in a green jacket said she saw a little boy 10 minutes ago, near the front, but didn't see him leave. William felt the pressure rise behind his eyes. He called again. Nothing. Then he ran. Within 20 minutes, the store manager had been notified. An employee paged over the intercom. Customers checked the restroom, the dairy aisle, the parking lot. No one had seen a child leave. Security was called. The first officer arrived within the hour. And by then, William was sitting on the floor near the carts, his head in his hands, while police officers reviewed grainy footage from the overhead dome camera above the entrance. The tape showed Luke walking toward the vending machines. Then the footage jumped. A glitch, no more than a second, and the boy was gone. Just gone. Outside, the parking lot was cordoned off. The sun had climbed higher, but everything felt darker, as if time had stopped just long enough for one boy to vanish through a hole the world didn't want to acknowledge. William didn't go home that night. Neither did the officers. A missing child was no small matter. But as hours turned into days, and days into weeks, the air shifted. The urgency dulled. The theories grew stranger. And William's world began to shrink, folding in on the empty space where his son used to be. He would come to remember that morning in fragments. The smell of toast, the clink of a spoon, and a napkin folded just right, left untouched in a lunchbox that was never opened. By the end of the 3rd day, the grocery store reopened. They'd closed briefly after the incident, partly for the investigation, partly for optics. But a store like Cedar Square couldn't afford to be closed long. It was the only full grocery in a 5-mile radius. Life had to go on, people said. Bills didn't pause just because a child went missing. But for William, time didn't move forward. Not really. The days passed, but not as progress, more like erosion. The search expanded outward. Door-to-door inquiries, flyers taped to stop signs, news vans in the parking lot, volunteers walking shoulder to shoulder through empty lots and wooded edges. Police brought in dogs. Psychics called the station. The tape from the security cameras was reviewed frame by frame, then again in slow motion, then again with filters. No sign of Luke leaving the store. No sign of anyone unusual entering. It was as if the air had swallowed him. William stayed at the precinct most nights. He pored over the same stills, the same 15-second loop of his son walking toward the vending machines and never coming back. The glitch in the footage, that single dropped frame, became the town's obsession. Was it tampered with? A camera malfunction? Could someone have known when and where to strike? But the timestamp didn't lie. It was a normal morning. Luke was there and then he wasn't. Theories bloomed like weeds. Some said he ran away, an 11-year-old boy with no money and no plan. Others believed he had been taken by someone who worked in the store. Then there were the cruel ones. Rumors whispered in checkout lines and school parking lots. Maybe William had something to do with it. Maybe the marriage hadn't been as perfect as it seemed. Maybe grief wasn't the only thing eating at him. William's wife, Mara, broke first. She stopped sleeping in their bedroom, stopped answering calls from friends, stopped looking William in the eye. They grieved differently. That's what the counselors said. But William didn't grieve. He searched. He cataloged. He memorized every feature of that vending machine. Its scratched metal frame, the blinking red display, the worn-out buttons labeled A1 to E5. He couldn't explain why. But something about that machine lodged itself in his mind, like it had seen something it wouldn't say. Months passed. Luke's room remained untouched. His school sent home a yearbook with a sticky note marking the class photo he should have been in. The local news stopped returning calls. Even Detective Harper, the lead on the case, eventually started to speak in passive voice. If there's anything we missed, should Luke be found? The present tense slipped away. On the 1-year anniversary, William sat in his car across from the store. He didn't go inside. He just watched. People still came and went. Still pushed carts and cursed about prices and fussed at children over candy. Normalcy, blooming like nothing had ever happened. The vending machines had been replaced. Sleeker, digital, wrapped in brown paper. No note. William saw them during his visit and stood there for a long time, his reflection warped in the glass of the machine. He reached out and pressed a random button, D4. A plastic bottle thunked into the tray. He didn't take it, just watched it sit there. Then he turned and walked out. In the 12th year, something changed. Not in the store, not in the case. In him. A small itch, a flicker, a moment while brushing his teeth when he thought, go back again. Today. He hadn't planned to, but he did. And this time something jammed. Something stuck. And when the machine was opened, he saw it. A scrap of paper, folded, pressed against the back wall of the compartment, and scrawled in shaky, childlike writing, Dad, I'm here. Please don't leave. The air in William's lungs left all at once. He didn't speak, didn't blink. He just stared, frozen as the store clerk, young, indifferent, peeled the note free from the inner wall of the vending machine with a gloved hand. Must have slipped behind the tray, the clerk said, offering it with a casual shrug. Looks old. You want it. William took it slowly, as if accepting something fragile, something that might vanish with too much pressure. His fingers trembled as he unfolded it. The paper was brittle, browned at the edges, stained with condensation and time. But the handwriting, he would have known it anywhere. Blocky, slanted, shaky. Dad, I'm here. Please don't leave. No date, no other words. Just that. He read it again, and again, and again. The world outside the machine blurred. The humming of the soda coils, the murmur of the automatic doors, the clatter of a shopping cart, it all faded. His heart didn't race. It slowed. as if his body already knew what his mind hadn't caught up to yet. Luke had been here. After all these years. After searches, after grief, after suspicion, after silence. He had been here. And maybe he still was. William left the store in a daze. The note folded tightly in his pocket like a piece of living history. He didn't go home. He drove to the station. The same building he had haunted for years. Detective Harper was gone now. Retired. The desk sergeant was someone new. Young, cautious-eyed, with a badge that still looked freshly clipped. William didn't make an appointment. He simply walked to the counter, pulled the note from his coat, and laid it flat on the glass. This, he said quietly, was inside the vending machine. The officer leaned in. Read it. The silence between them stretched thin. Where did you find it? Cedar Square Grocery, William said. Same spot. Same machine. And you're... The officer paused, his eyes registering the name. Luke Granger's father. William nodded once. The station buzzed back to life faster than he expected. Forensics arrived that afternoon. The vending machine was sealed and marked as evidence. Photos taken. The clerk interviewed. The store manager notified. Police cordoned off the area and pulled up the floor mats. They weren't expecting what they found. Because beneath the vending machine was a seam in the tile. And under that seam, a latch. It took 3 hours to get the store's foundation plan. 2 more to confirm that the area beneath the machine hadn't been part of the original blueprints. The hatch led to a crawlspace. Small, shallow, barely large enough for an adult to fit through. But there it was, a rusted metal trapdoor, latched from the inside. When they pried it open, the smell was immediate. Old air, stale dust, something once wet and now dry. The space below stretched maybe 10 feet in each direction. And inside they found remnants. A toy car with a missing wheel. 2 wrappers from snacks no longer manufactured. And scratched into the drywall with something jagged. I waited. William stood at the edge of the crawlspace. One hand braced against the wall, his legs shaking. He couldn't bring himself to go down. Not yet. The forensic team cataloged everything. Every item. Every scrap. Every memory. But what haunted William most wasn't what they found. It was what they didn't.
No bones. No clothing.
No body. Just the absence of presence. The suggestion of a boy who had been there and had left. Where? How? When? The police combed the store again. Re-reviewed the footage. Questioned employees both past and present. Dug up old renovation permits. And that's when they found it. A work order. Dated 11 years ago. Authorized by the then assistant manager, since deceased. The note read, Install vent hatch behind vending units. Per special storage request. Maintenance to conceal post-install. Signed only with initials. No follow-up invoice. No record of completion. No reason why. William's mouth went dry. He remembered the note again. Dad, I'm here. Please don't leave. Not past tense. Not I was here, but am. Present. Could it mean now? Could it mean then? Could it mean both? That night, William sat alone at his kitchen table, the note before him, the old toy car in a Ziploc bag beside it. He ran his thumb along the edge of the paper. It had been 12 years, and now the silence was cracking. The following morning arrived pale and cold, the sun reluctant to rise. William sat awake long before it did, at the kitchen table, where his coffee had long since gone cold. He hadn't slept. He hadn't even tried. The note sat between his hands, opened and reopened so many times that the crease down the center had started to fray. 12 years. And now this, the vending machine, the trapdoor, the message, Luke's voice, trapped in ink and time, had found him again. But what did it mean? The police had cordoned off the crawlspace and were combing through it with meticulous care. Nothing had yet tied the contents to a specific date. No prints, no DNA, at least not yet. But the toys? The wrappers? The message in the wall? It was him. William didn't need confirmation. He remembered the toy car. It had been part of a set. Luke had cried for hours when he lost it behind a shelf in his bedroom. It wasn't the kind of thing another boy would just happen to have. Not in that color. Not with that chipped lightning bolt on the side. And the handwriting, God, it was Luke's. He would bet his soul on it. Still, the police were cautious, detached, respectful, but clinical. There's no sign anyone is currently being kept in the structure, they'd said. As of now, it appears long abandoned. We'll know more after the lab results. But William didn't want more. He wanted movement. He wanted answers. And most of all, he wanted to ask the question that had grown unbearable overnight. If Luke had been in that space, where had he gone next? Late that afternoon, Detective Marla Shaw, a newer name, younger than Harper, but sharp, called William back to the store. There's something you need to see, she said. When he arrived, the vending machine was gone, replaced by the hollow of the open floor. Yellow tape still fluttered from the doorway. But now, a team had cleared the crawlspace further and had broken through the back. There's more, she said quietly. We didn't see it at first. Behind the first crawlspace was a narrow passageway, carved between support beams, clearly intentional but carefully hidden. It sloped downward, dust clinging to the corners like memories. At the end of the passage, a small chamber, 7 feet by 7 feet, windowless, padded with aging insulation. Inside, a mattress, a stack of newspapers, a flashlight, a plastic bucket with a cracked lid, and scrawled along one wall in thick red marker, "Are you still looking for me?" William had to sit down. He clutched the edge of the shelf to stay upright, tears coming with no ceremony, no build-up, just sudden and hot and overwhelming. Because this room wasn't just a hiding place. It was a prison, a child-sized prison, and his son had lived here, maybe not for 12 years, but for some of them. That thought tore at him more than anything else. Evidence tags lined the floor. One wall bore marks from being scratched, long, frantic streaks. Some faint, others dug deep. "Do you think he escaped?" William asked, voice thin. Shaw nodded, slowly. "We don't know when, but this place was vacated. Sometime after the store's last major renovation." "What year?" "About 5 years ago." William looked at her. 5 years ago. That would mean Luke had possibly been free for nearly half a decade. But if that was true, where was he now? They ran checks through all known hospitals, clinics, shelters, and youth programs within a 200-mile radius. Nothing. No John Does matching Luke's description. No recent reports of teenagers showing signs of long-term confinement. William visited old case workers, showed Luke's childhood photos to anyone who would look. He even started a new online campaign. "Have you seen Luke Granger?" Updated with age-progressed renderings and a scan of the note. Caught fire briefly. Messages poured in. Tips, hopes, cruel hoaxes. But none led to Luke. None led home. And then, 3 days after the discovery, William received a voicemail. Blocked number. The voice was soft, young, uneven. "I saw your flyer. You were at the store. I saw you." A pause. "Please don't come looking yet. I'm not ready. But I remember. I know who you are." Click. William dropped the phone. He sank to the floor and whispered his son's name into the quiet. Because there was no mistaking it. The voice was older, lower, but it was his. Luke had found a way back. And this time, he wasn't lost. William played the voicemail 37 times. The first dozen were frantic, reaching for clarity in the cadence, trying to match it against fading memories of bedtime stories and whispered jokes. The next dozen, slower, focusing on the breath between words, the way "please" caught slightly, how "remember" was said with quiet certainty. And then the rest, just to keep the sound alive. Just to hear his son's voice echo off the kitchen walls. He sat in the dark for hours after that, holding the phone like it might vibrate again, might pulse with another message, a location, a breath of reunion. But it didn't. The message was all he got. "I saw you. Please don't come looking yet." What did that mean? That Luke was watching? That he was near? That he didn't feel safe enough to come home? Detective Shaw called later that morning, unaware of the voicemail. Forensics had confirmed. The handwriting on the vending machine note matched samples from Luke's school records. The marker from the wall, same type found in the missing children's kits distributed in the early 2010s. The food wrappers, all from discontinued snack lines. Even the flashlight bore a scratched serial number matching a recall list from a local supply chain, one the grocery store had used years ago. It was no longer a question of if Luke had been there, only how long, and why he left. Shaw asked to see the voicemail. William played it for her in person. She listened once, then again, then stared into the middle distance like she'd heard a ghost speak. "Do you want us to trace the call?" she asked quietly. William hesitated. Every instinct screamed yes. But the message echoed back, "Please don't come looking yet." He shook his head. "Not yet. If we push too hard, we might lose him again." The days that followed were unlike any William had known. Not numb like the early years. Not broken like the divorce. This was worse in a way because now there was hope, and hope was far more dangerous than grief. Grief was heavy, but it didn't move. Hope danced just out of reach. He returned to the store each afternoon. Not to search, just to wait. He sat in his car, parked 3 spots from the vending machine's old space. Watched the doors. Watched the sidewalk. Watched the people. Watched for him. And then, on the 4th day, someone paused at the edge of his vision. A boy, no, a young man, maybe 17, stood across the street beside the bus stop. Hoodie pulled tight, face in shadow. He didn't look over. But William felt it. Felt something shift in his chest. The way certain birds feel storm changes long before clouds gather. He stepped out of the car. The figure tensed. Then turned. Then ran. William chased him without thinking. Across the lot, through a side alley where the pavement split with roots and runoff. He called out, "Luke!" Once, just once, and it cracked something in the air. The figure didn't answer, didn't slow, vanished around a corner. By the time William turned it, there was only an empty sidewalk, leaves stirring against the curb, and the distant hiss of a bus pulling away. He stood there, breathless, staring into the nothing. But on the bench by the stop, taped beneath the edge, was a slip of paper. He tore it free with trembling hands. 3 words, scrawled in the same blocky handwriting. "You're getting closer." That night, William didn't sleep. He sat at his desk with both notes laid out beside each other, compared their edges, the loops of the G, the slant of the R. They matched, but the second note was steadier, older. The fear wasn't in the pen anymore. It was in the space between lines. Why is he hiding? Who is he afraid of? William flipped the paper over. On the back, a rough sketch, a tree, path, a chain-link fence, and a small square labeled C. A map. He knew that tree. It was the park behind his old elementary school. The next day, just before dusk, William followed the map. He parked outside the schoolyard and crossed through the dry grass toward the back fence. The tree stood alone, just as drawn. The square marked C turned out to be a crumbling concession stand from when the school used to host weekend sports leagues. Inside, the floor was littered with dead leaves. A shoebox sat in the far corner. He opened it. Inside, a photograph of a boy, maybe 10, standing in front of a blue door. Luke's eyes, Luke's hands, Luke's stance. A worn library card, issued in another town 2 counties over. A final note. "You're not the only one looking. Please wait." William stepped back out into the fading light, heart pounding. He looked around. Nothing. No figure. No sound. No rustle. But somewhere out there, Luke was moving. Alive. Watching. And maybe, finally, coming home. The sun was gone by the time William got back to his car, and the streets had grown hushed with that specific kind of silence only small towns know. Street lights flickered against the wind, and the sky hung heavy with waiting. He sat in the driver's seat, hands gripping the wheel but going nowhere. The shoebox was beside him on the passenger seat. He kept glancing at it, as if expecting it to breathe. The photo, the library card, the second message. You're not the only one looking. Please wait. The words felt less like a request and more like a warning. The next morning, he drove to the address on the library card. It belonged to a tiny town 2 hours west, one William had only passed through once years ago. He didn't tell Shaw. Not yet. Not because he didn't trust her, but because something in Luke's notes told him this had to remain quiet, at least for now. It was a risk, but this wasn't about a case anymore. This was his son. And something told him the answers weren't going to be found through the proper channels. The library was quiet, one of those old converted brick buildings with creaking floors and yellowed lighting. William showed the librarian the card. She adjusted her glasses, then smiled faintly. Oh yeah, that's one of ours. That number matches the batch from about 4 years ago. Do you have a name? She checked the system. Card was issued to a Jordan Vale. William's breath caught. He didn't recognize the name, but he asked, "Any address?" The librarian hesitated, then scribbled something on a sticky note. "It's outdated, probably, but we ask for it at sign-up." William took the note. "Read it. A trailer park. Lot 3B. He found the trailer 30 minutes later. The place looked half-abandoned. Chipped paint, broken skirting, overgrown grass frozen in place by winter's early touch. No cars.
No lights.
Still, he approached the door. Knocked. No answer. Knocked again. A faint sound. Footsteps? A shuffle? He waited. Then, slowly, the door opened. Only a crack. A single eye appeared through the gap. Blue. Unblinking. Then it shut. A lock clicked. William raised his hand. "Luke!" Nothing. He waited another full minute, then slipped the photo from his coat pocket and gently held it up to the door's edge. "I found your notes. I know you've been watching. I'm not here to scare you. I'm not going to ask you to come with me. But I need you to know I never stopped looking." He placed the photo down on the welcome mat. Not once. Then he turned. Walked away. Didn't look back. He waited at the diner down the road, nursing a cup of coffee for over an hour. Every car that passed, every gust of wind outside the window, felt like a maybe, until someone walked in. A boy, no, not a boy. A young man. 17, maybe 18. Taller than William expected. Hoodie pulled low. He walked straight to William's table. Didn't sit. Just stood there. "I saw you." William looked up slowly. The eyes were the same. Older, yes. Worn. But the same. "Luke." He stood, but didn't reach. Luke's voice was rough, hesitant. "I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. I remember you reading to me, with the flashlight when the power went out." William nodded, voice thick. "The Dragon book. You liked the voices I did. You made them funny. I tried." Luke's lips twitched, just a flicker of a smile. Then it vanished. "I don't remember everything. Some of it's pieces. Other stuff's gone." "That's okay," William said. "We've got time." A pause. Then Luke sat. It wasn't a reunion with tears or embraces. It was something quieter.
Truer.
A shared silence. A beginning. Luke didn't come home that night. He wasn't ready. William didn't push. But they sat for 2 hours at that table, refilling coffee neither of them drank, exchanging stories from 2 timelines that had once been a single road. Eventually, Luke stood. "I still don't feel safe," he said. "Is someone after you?" William asked. Luke hesitated, then nodded, just once. "I think so. Can you tell me who?" "Not yet." Another pause. "But I left something in the crawl space," Luke said. "Behind the far wall. I didn't think anyone would ever find it." William leaned forward. "What is it?" "Evidence." And just like that, the entire room shifted. Luke left before William could ask more. But he left a promise too. "I'll find you again. Soon." Then he was gone. And William sat there, watching the space he'd just occupied. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from something else. A second beginning, a second chance, and the first real lead toward the truth, where the crawl space had been uncovered. Yellow tape still hung limp along the fence, barely clinging to the poles. The police presence was gone, temporarily. They'd finished processing the space, marking it cold until new evidence turned up. William had that now. He approached the plywood-covered hole in the floor, his breath rising in short clouds. With gloved hands, he pried back the boards and climbed down into the crawlspace for the second time in his life. The cold hit him immediately. It wasn't just temperature, it was memory. The kind of stillness that only spaces designed for hiding can hold. His flashlight beam bounced weakly off the insulation. The dust, the walls still bearing old scratches and newer graffiti. He moved to the back wall. It looked like the others, unfinished, silent. But then, to the far left, he noticed something new. A small panel, wooden, maybe 1 foot across, separate from the rest. It was newer, screwed in with mismatched bolts, slightly warped from moisture. He unscrewed it with shaking hands. Behind it, a hollow, and inside, a bundle, wrapped in plastic. He took it to Detective Shaw immediately, still sealed, still untouched. They opened it together in the evidence room. Inside were 3 objects. One, a spiral notebook, pages half full, some written in a child's hand, others shakier, older. It chronicled moments. He brought food. Only if I'm quiet. Don't ask questions. He gets mad when I hum. I think he lives upstairs. 2. A key card, labeled Service Level B. The name of a private storage unit company 2 blocks from the grocery store. 3. A photograph. Blurry, but focused just enough to see the subject. A man in a janitor uniform, face obscured, one hand gripping a child's arm. William stared at the photo, his blood turning to ice. The man's stance, his size, it matched someone from 12 years ago. Someone always on the edges of the original investigation. A janitor, retired weeks after Luke vanished. Moved out of state. Name Edward R. Stokes. Shaw moved quickly. The storage company confirmed the keycard was from their old system, phased out 5 years ago, but they still had records. 1 unit had been paid for in cash over a decade. Recently closed. Contents never claimed. Warrants were secured. They opened the unit within hours. What they found was a second room, like the one under the grocery store but worse. Insulated. Soundproofed. Old locks on the outside of the door. Inside, a mattress, a pile of children's clothing, photographs torn in half, a rusted lunchbox. Everything reeked of old sweat, fear, abandonment. But most damning of all, a second notebook, filled in Edward Stokes's hand. Rambling, disconnected, talking about the boy who listens and the one who stopped screaming. William didn't ask to see the full contents. He didn't want to know everything. Some truths didn't need detail. But one thing was clear now. Luke hadn't just been taken. He'd been kept, hidden, controlled, silenced, and somehow escaped. The search for Stokes reignited. He had disappeared shortly after the storage unit was shut down. No forwarding address. No active employment. But a gas station clerk 2 towns away recognized his face from the bulletin Shaw distributed. He comes through every couple months, the clerk said. Real quiet, pays in cash. Usually buys scratch tickets and canned beans. They had a lead, and William had hope. Meanwhile, Luke called again. Same blocked number. William answered on the first ring. No greeting.
No introduction.
Just Luke's voice. I knew you'd find it. William whispered. Are you safe? A pause. Not yet. Where are you? Close. Watching. You don't have to run anymore, Luke. We found what you left. I know. Another pause. I think I'm ready soon. And then, click. That night, William sat in the living room with all the lights off, the box of notes in his lap, the silence around him no longer feeling hollow. Luke was nearby. Alive. Hurt, yes, but alive. And he was reaching. Not in fear. Not in shadows. But with trust. It wouldn't be long now. William could feel it. Like the moment before a storm finally breaks. When the air changes. When everything goes still. And something lost begins to come home. The next time Luke called, he didn't block the number. It was 10:43 p.m. William was already awake, sitting on the edge of his bed with the phone in his hand, as if he'd known the call was coming. When it rang, he didn't flinch, just pressed accept and brought it to his ear. Dad! The word felt foreign and familiar all at once. A whisper stretched across years. I'm here, William said, his voice low.
I'm listening.
Luke didn't speak at first. William heard the wind, a distant car, maybe footsteps. Then, I want to come back. I don't know how. You already started, William said. Every note, every word. That was you coming back. Another pause, then a breath. There's a bus stop, South Ridge Road. There's an old payphone. I'll be there tomorrow night. William's chest tightened. I'll be there too. No police, Luke added. I promise. Click. The line went dead. The next 24 hours were slow and sharp, like walking barefoot across glass. William barely moved, afraid he'd miss something. Some call, some sign. He made no plans, told no one. Even Detective Shaw was left in the dark, for now. By evening, the wind had picked up. Leaves skittered across the pavement like whispers. William drove without music, without headlights at first, letting the last of the light guide him. South Ridge Road was quiet. A place people only passed through, never stayed. The bus stop was there. Bent metal, a cracked plexiglass panel, and the skeleton of an old payphone still bolted to the ground. William parked across the street and waited. He didn't pace, didn't speak, just sat. At 9:17, a figure appeared. A slow silhouette, hood up, shoulders tight, hands in pockets. William stood. The boy stopped at the curb. For a moment, neither moved. Then Luke crossed and stood in front of his father. There were no embraces, no outbursts, just eyes meeting eyes. Luke's were older, worn, but still blue, still alive. William swallowed. Hey, buddy. Luke nodded. Hey. The silence between them was not awkward. It was sacred. Then Luke looked away, scanning the trees. You came alone? I told you I would. I had to be sure.
Yves.
I've been watched before. When I left, I wasn't sure if he'd come after me. Stokes. Luke flinched slightly. You know. William nodded. We found the room. The notes. The photo. Luke looked down. I was there for a long time, he whispered. And then one day, I realized he wasn't coming back. The door was unlocked. I walked out and didn't stop. How long ago? 5 years. William felt a sharp ache in his chest. All this time, where did you go? Luke shrugged. Shelters, libraries, empty houses. I changed names, stayed quiet. It was easier to disappear. But you left a trail. I wanted to be found, Luke said, voice tight. But on my terms. William nodded slowly. I understand. Luke looked up at him again. His eyes shimmered. I don't know how to live like a normal person anymore. William stepped closer. Then don't. Just live like you. I'll meet you there. Luke blinked. The first tear fell before he could hide it. And then he took a step forward and let his father pull him into the quietest, longest embrace of his life. They didn't go home that night. Not right away. William booked a motel nearby. Clean, warm, quiet. Luke sat in the armchair, knees pulled to his chest, the hotel blanket draped over him. William didn't ask questions. He just let the silence fill the room again, this time without weight. At 3 a.m., Luke finally spoke. There were others. William turned. What? Stokes. I think I wasn't the first. And I don't think I was the last. The air seemed to drop 5 degrees. Do you know where they are? Luke shook his head. He never let us see each other. But I heard voices. For months. Then they were gone. William's mouth went dry. This was more than a reunion. This was a case still open. Still dangerous. He called Shaw the next morning. Told her everything. By noon, a new warrant was issued. They reopened every file connected to Stokes, old employment records, relocation documents, every town he'd passed through. Shaw contacted the FBI. It was no longer just about Luke. It never had been. But for now, William focused on his son. He took him to buy new clothes, let him pick out his favorite cereal, left the porch light on at night. Not because Luke was missing, but because he was home. In the evenings, they sat at the kitchen table, quietly, side by side. No questions, no pressure, just being. Because sometimes, coming home isn't a moment. It's a process, a long walk through silence, with someone waiting at the end. The days that followed felt surreal. William had imagined this moment for 12 years. So many versions of it. Some miraculous, some tragic, but none of them prepared him for the strange stillness of reality. Luke was here. Not as a memory or a photograph, but a living, breathing teenager curled up on the couch, eating cereal straight from the box and falling asleep to the hum of the television. He barely spoke during the first few days, and when he did, it was short, sharp. Yes.
No.
I don't know. But William didn't press. He gave Luke space, physical and emotional. When they sat down for breakfast, he'd say something soft, something ordinary. There's more milk in the fridge. Or, I used to burn toast. Still do. Luke never answered those sentences, but he stayed in the room. And that was enough. Detective Shaw came by the house the following Tuesday. William had told Luke in advance. And to his surprise, Luke didn't resist. He didn't hide, didn't run. He simply sat at the dining table, hoodie pulled over his head, eyes guarded but still. Shaw was gentle. She didn't take notes at first, just talked. I've read your notes, she said. What you left behind. The detail, the courage. Luke, it matters. Luke nodded slowly. I didn't know anyone would ever find them. Well, someone did. And it led us back to you. She paused. Do you want to help us find him? Stokes. Luke was silent for a long time. Then he nodded again. Yes. That afternoon, he gave his first full statement. William wasn't in the room. He waited in the hallway, staring at a water stain on the ceiling, hands clenched in his lap. The interview lasted over 2 hours. When it ended, Shaw stepped out first. Her face was pale, tight. He's remembering more than we expected, she said quietly. There are more children, at least 2, possibly 3, some before him, one during. Names? William asked. She shook her head. Just voices, nicknames, descriptions. Luke stepped out behind her, his expression blank, his shoulders heavier. He didn't speak until they got home. I was the only one who escaped, he said once the door closed. William turned slowly. You don't know that.
Ido.
Luke said, with a weight in his voice that didn't belong to someone so young. He never let them leave. But he got careless with me. William didn't ask how. Not yet. The FBI joined the case within days. Stokes's last known location had been a bus ticket purchased in Pennsylvania, under an alias. Surveillance showed him boarding alone, disappearing again. He had a pattern. He stayed in motion, worked quiet, invisible jobs, used cash, avoided names. It made sense now why the trail had gone cold so quickly. Luke had filled in the blanks. The underground rooms, the hidden keys, the rules Stokes had used to control him. Silence, reward, fear, isolation. I used to think the vending machine was magic, Luke told William one night. He let me play near it. Said if I was good, I'd get a soda. William froze. That's why you were near it? Luke nodded. That's when he grabbed me. In the crawl space, Luke had carved messages for years. Some were meant for William. Others were just to keep his own memory alive. If I forgot who I was, he said, I thought the wall would remember for me. William sat beside him on the back porch, stunned by the simplicity of it. So I wrote things down. Anything. How the light came through the vent. The sound of footsteps upstairs. I even drew pictures. I think part of me always hoped you'd find them. I did, William said softly. I just didn't know what they were. Now you do. Despite the storm of media, William kept Luke out of the spotlight. There were reporters camped outside the grocery store, blogs speculating every hour. But no one had Luke's face. No one knew what he looked like now. They kept it that way. Luke wasn't ready to become a symbol. He was still becoming a person again. A week later, he asked for something small. "I want to see my room." William froze. He hadn't touched it in over a decade. But that night, he opened the door. Luke stood at the threshold for a long time. Then he stepped inside. The posters were faded. The bed too small. But the desk was still there. The drawer with old crayon drawings still intact. He sat at the edge of the bed, picked up a toy car from the shelf. A small blue one with a chipped wheel. "I used to name them," he said quietly. "This one was Flash. He was the fastest." William smiled. "You made him a cardboard racetrack once." "I remember." They didn't talk much after that. Luke just sat in the room for an hour, then came out and said, "I want to stay." And William knew it had begun. Not the end of the story, but the start of what came after. It was the smallest thing that cracked the wall between them. A Thursday night, rain ticking against the window. William had made pasta, overcooked, undersalted. Luke didn't complain, but halfway through, he pushed his plate aside and asked, "Did I have a bike?" William looked up. "Yeah." "What color?" "Red, with black handlebars. You'd put baseball cards in the spokes." Luke blinked, then smiled. "Flash," he said. "That's where the name came from." William nodded slowly. "You used to race down the sidewalk like your life depended on it." Luke's smile faltered, but didn't vanish. "I remember falling, skinned both knees, and screamed like you were dying," William added gently. Luke's shoulders shook with the memory. It was the first time he laughed. It was small, dry, barely audible, but it was there. And with it, something shifted. That night, William found Luke asleep on the couch, curled into himself, the old blanket wrapped tightly around his shoulders. The television hummed softly, casting faint light across his face. He looked peaceful, like a boy again. Not a case, not a mystery, just a son. William turned off the TV, adjusted the blanket, and let the room go dark. Meanwhile, the investigation deepened. The FBI's profile on Stokes now stretched over 50 pages. 2 more possible victims had been identified, one in Texas, one in Kentucky, both cold cases with similar patterns. Disappearance in or near buildings with public access and abandoned infrastructure. Both with 0 witnesses. Both children between the ages of 9 and 12. Shaw updated William in regular calls now. She didn't press for Luke to testify. "Not yet. We don't want to break what's being rebuilt," she said. Still, she asked for access to the notebooks. William gave them. Luke agreed, too, so long as the originals stayed with him. "They're mine," he said. "I gave them to survive." Around the house, Luke began to occupy more space. First, quietly. He unpacked one drawer in his bedroom. Then another. Brought a bag of clothes into the closet. Started setting his plate in the sink after meals. William noticed all of it. Not because it was loud, but because for 12 years the house had been still. Now it breathed again. And every breath was a miracle. One afternoon, William came home to find the back door open. Panic surged through him. He called out once, twice. No answer. But then he stepped outside and saw Luke in the backyard, kneeling near the old flower bed. He was planting something. "I thought the soil would be too dry," Luke said as William approached. "But it's still soft underneath." "What are you planting?" "I don't know yet." William smiled faintly. "That's okay." Luke didn't look up, but he said, "Thanks for not giving up." William's throat tightened. "I didn't know how to." Luke nodded once. "I think I'm glad." That night, William dug into the attic. He hadn't been up there in years. Not since the early searches, the desperate nights of checking behind every box, every curtain, every cupboard for a boy who would never answer. He brought down a box marked Luke, age 10. Inside, drawings, report cards, a lopsided clay dinosaur, a school photo with chocolate smudged on the corner. He set it on Luke's bed and said nothing. The next morning it was open, and Luke had hung the photo on the back of his door. A boy frozen in time, now living beside the boy who returned. At the precinct, Shaw called with new urgency. They had tracked Stokes to a cabin in West Virginia, isolated, rented under another fake name. Neighbors described him as quiet, carried boxes in at night, never seen in daylight. The FBI planned a raid, but they needed confirmation. Does Luke recognize the man in the ID photo? Shaw asked. William hesitated. I'll ask. He showed Luke the photo that evening. Luke stared at it for a long time, then said, he used to hum when he cooked. That's him. Are you sure? Luke's hand tightened. I'd know that face anywhere. The raid happened quietly. No media. No drama. Inside the cabin, they found walls reinforced with soundproof foam, an underground space partially constructed, a bed nailed to the floor. But it was empty. Stokes was already gone. Again. But this time they had more than a trail. They had Luke. They had proof. And the story was no longer just loss. It was now a pursuit. Back at home, Luke added one more note to the old shoebox. It read, he didn't take everything from me. William asked what it meant. Luke said, he took years. But not my voice. Not this. And he tapped the box. It rattled slightly, alive with memory. The porch light stayed off now. Not because they stopped waiting, but because waiting had ended, and healing had begun. In whispers, in soil, in stories written on paper and planted into the ground. Like seeds, like proof, like the return of something you thought you'd never see again. Winter crept in slowly, as if hesitant to touch what had already been broken and stitched back together. Luke stayed. Each week that passed, he grew more present. Not just in the house, but in the world. He took walks alone now, not far, just to the end of the street and back. William watched from the window without stepping out, resisting the urge to follow, to protect. This was part of the rebuilding space. One night, Luke came back holding 2 library books. Figured I should start reading again, he said. I used to like it. William didn't say he remembered. Didn't say how Luke used to curl up with books too big for his age, how he read under the blankets with a flashlight even when told not to. He just smiled. You always did. They talked more now. Not about Stokes. Not about the missing years. Not yet. Instead, they spoke about small things. Why the dog in the neighbor's yard barked at every leaf. Why the supermarket started rearranging shelves for no reason. One night, over dinner, Luke said, you used to make Sunday pancakes. William nodded. Burned every other one. I liked them burnt. I didn't know that. I didn't tell you. They both smiled, a shared confession. But healing doesn't follow a straight line. One morning, William found Luke sitting on the kitchen floor, arms around his knees, silent and shivering. It wasn't cold. It wasn't a seizure. It was something else. Something older, deeper. William didn't speak. He sat beside him, their shoulders touching. They stayed there for an hour. Eventually, Luke said, I dreamt I was back, in the crawl space, but you never came. William closed his eyes.
I'm sorry.
Luke didn't move, but after a while, he whispered, you still found me. Eventually. That afternoon, Shaw called with news. Stokes had used a credit card in Idaho. A gas station. Security footage confirmed it, same face, same build. But that wasn't all. He had someone with him. A boy, 12, maybe 13. Too thin. Looking down. They weren't too late. Not yet. Luke didn't say much when William told him. He sat on the porch for hours, bundled in a coat, staring into the fading light. When William brought out a cup of tea, Luke finally spoke. He's doing it again. William didn't ask how he knew. He didn't need to. Luke had lived it. 2 days later, Luke approached Shaw himself. I want to help. She didn't pressure him. Didn't immediately say yes. But she listened. They sat in her office for 3 hours. Luke described the schedule, the habits, the cues. He sketched layouts from memory, trapdoors, hiding places, what Stokes used to manipulate him. Food, fear, silence, and something new. He used a different name sometimes, Luke said. He told me to call him Mr. Bell. Shaw's eyes narrowed. They ran the alias through databases, cross-referenced with previous child abduction cases, and found a match. A 2014 missing persons report from Wyoming. A boy named Isaac Bell vanished near a bus terminal. They believed it now. Stokes wasn't just a captor. He was a collector, a man who moved from town to town using false names, false jobs, building false homes beneath floors and behind walls. And Luke had been the key, the survivor, the witness, the voice. That night, William came into Luke's room to say goodnight. Luke was at his desk writing. William paused in the doorway. "Letters?" he asked. Luke nodded. "To the ones I remember. I don't know their real names, but I remember the sound of their breathing, the way one of them sang at night." He looked up. "I don't want them to be forgotten." William's voice was soft. "They won't be." Luke folded a piece of paper, placed it into the shoebox. "Then that means we're winning." He went to sleep without fear. The lights off, the door open, and in the morning he didn't sit on the floor. He stood by the window watching the snow fall, a white blanket over a wounded world. Not to erase it, but to give it shape, to show where to begin again. And downstairs, William brewed 2 mugs of tea, one with too much sugar, the other just right, because he remembered now. He remembered everything. Snow continued to fall through the weekend, not thick enough to stop life, but enough to hush it, to make the town feel softer, slower. The trees outside William's window were brushed with white. The sky pressed low, heavy with silence. Inside the house, it was warmer than it had been in years. Luke had begun humming again, soft, tuneless, absent-minded, while brushing his teeth, while folding the laundry, while staring out the window. William noticed it the first time and said nothing, but he listened. He let it fill the spaces once ruled by stillness. Luke had a routine now, up before 9, tea instead of coffee. He wrote in his notebooks again, not to survive, but to remember. He even ventured outside, alone, to the mailbox, to the corner, to the park, where he sat on the same bench for 20 minutes before returning home. Always returning home. That meant more to William than any word Luke could have said. At the precinct, Shaw prepared the next step. "We think we know where he's going," she told William. "A pattern's forming. Gas stops every 300 miles. Always with access to restrooms, vending machines, payphones, and underground storage. It's like he's building rooms, waiting." William's voice tightened. "Waiting for what?" "We don't know. But you'll catch him." Shaw nodded. "We're close." She hesitated, then added, "When this ends, we may need Luke to testify. His story will help others believe what's still hidden." William breathed out slowly. "We'll talk about it." That night he did. He sat across from Luke at the table. "They may ask you to speak," he said. "Not now, not soon, but eventually." Luke stirred his tea. "I already did speak. In the walls, in the notes. That was the hardest part." William nodded. "You don't owe anyone anything. But I remember what it was like," Luke said, "feeling like no one was coming. If someone else is still there, I want them to know. You don't have to decide today." Luke looked up. "I already did." He spent the next few nights preparing. He asked William to record him, reading one of the letters he wrote in the crawlspace. His voice shook, but he didn't stop. "My name is Luke Granger. I was taken. I was hidden, but I wasn't forgotten. And if you're reading this, if you're somewhere like I was, you're not forgotten either." He paused, then added, "You're not broken. You're not lost. You're just waiting to come home." When he finished, he pressed stop. "I want them to hear this," he said, "before the trial, before they know my face. I want them to know my voice." William reached across the table and held his hand. No words, just warmth. The FBI scheduled the operation for the following week. Idaho, a rural area with a pattern of missing infrastructure, hidden leases, and just enough digital breadcrumbs to suggest Stokes was preparing another room. Luke didn't ask for updates. He simply kept writing. More letters. To Isaac. To the girl who sang. To Button, a nickname Luke had given a boy who never spoke, but always carried a small stuffed bear. He didn't remember what Button looked like, but he remembered his fear, and that was enough. On the morning of the raid, William stood in the kitchen, pacing. Luke joined him at the window. He didn't ask what was happening. He already knew. "I want to plant something today," Luke said. William turned. "Now?" "While it's snowing." They bundled up in coats and boots, walked to the backyard. Luke knelt beside the bed of soil he had cleared in the fall. He pushed aside the crusted top layer and pressed a seed into the cold earth. "What kind?" William asked. "I'm not sure," Luke said. "Something that takes time." Then he stood. "I can wait." That night, Shaw called. Stokes had been captured. One child was rescued. It was Isaac, 12 years old, malnourished but alive. There would be a trial. There would be headlines. But for now, there was safety. Luke didn't speak when William told him. He just closed his eyes. Then, without a word, walked upstairs. Later, William checked on him. The door was open. Luke was asleep, a small notebook on his chest, the pencil still in his hand. William gently pulled the blanket higher. On the desk was a new note, folded once. He opened it. "The door doesn't creak anymore. The light isn't flickering. I think I'm home." The news broke the next morning. Man arrested in multi-state child abduction case. Survivor testimony helps identify missing child. Isaac Bell found alive, the boy who vanished in 2014. The headlines spread fast, but none of them named Luke. His identity had been protected, at least for now. Still, the ripples reached him. Strangers online asked questions. Threads speculated. A photo from a school yearbook surfaced, blurred but still him. William unplugged the house phone. They didn't go outside for 2 days. Luke didn't speak much. He watched the coverage in silence, absorbing it the way he had always done, quietly, alone. His hands clenched when Stokes's face appeared on screen. But he didn't cry. He didn't run. He didn't flinch. That night, he asked William a question that caught him off guard. "What happened the day I disappeared?" William's spoon stopped midair. Luke was looking at him, steady. "I remember pieces," he said. "The vending machine, the coins, the noise, then nothing. Or maybe I don't want to remember." William set the spoon down. "You asked if you could go look at the dragon cards. I told you I'd be in the bread aisle. I thought I could still see you from there." Luke nodded slowly. "And when you came back, I was gone." "Yes. You thought I ran away?"
No.
William said quickly. "Never. Not once." Luke looked down. "He told me you stopped looking." William's throat burned. "He lied. I know now." They sat in silence. Then Luke whispered. "He said I wasn't worth being found." William reached across the table, his voice breaking. "You were the only thing I ever looked for." Luke didn't cry, but something in him cracked open. And for the first time, he let William pull him in fully. Arms wrapped, breath held. 2 lives folding into one again. In the days that followed, Luke wrote another statement. Not for the court. Not for the news. For Isaac. It was short. "You're not alone. It's dark now, but it won't stay. Don't listen to the voice that says you're too broken to go back. You're not. Promise." He asked Shaw to pass it along. She agreed.
No cameras.
No press. Just one survivor to another. A message passed between the walls. The trial date was set for spring. William sat with Luke in the lawyer's office, watching him flip through folders of photos, files, timelines. "You don't have to do this," William reminded him. "You've already done more than anyone could ask." Luke didn't look up. "I have to," he said, "because I lived." One day in February, the snow finally melted. William came home from the store to find Luke in the backyard, kneeling beside the flower bed. He was digging, carefully, gently. The dirt was soft now, dark and rich. What are you planting today? William asked. Luke shrugged. I think this one's a tree. A big one. Maybe. If I don't mess it up. William smiled. I don't think you could. Luke turned to him. Would you have believed I was still alive? If not for the note. William's answer came without hesitation. Yes, always. Luke tilted his head. Even after 12 years? William knelt beside him. I didn't know how to stop hoping. I just got quieter about it. Luke looked down at his hands, stained with soil, then back at the earth. I'm trying to grow something. You are, William said. You think it'll work? I think it already has. That evening, William came downstairs and found the shoebox open. Luke had added a new item. A small packet of seeds, taped shut, labeled in pencil. Home. The box was almost full now. Not with grief. Not with evidence. With proof. That something lost could return. That something broken could regrow. That silence could end. Not with a scream, but with a whisper. I'm still here. The weeks before the trial passed in a quiet kind of storm. Reporters circled like vultures. Legal teams made their rounds. The phrase high profile was used too often, and Luke's name, though still sealed by court order, began to leak into whispers, into message boards, into corners of the internet that fed on rumor more than fact. William did his best to shield him, turned down interview requests, declined offers for book deals, podcasts, documentaries. This isn't a story, he told one producer on the phone. It's a person. Luke stayed indoors more often again, retreating a bit, but not hiding. He had learned the difference. One morning, Shaw visited the house with a plain manila envelope. These are the photos Stokes kept, she said, setting it gently on the table. Luke stared at it for a long time, then nodded. I want to see them. William hesitated. You don't have to. Luke didn't look away. I do. He opened the envelope. Inside were 9 photos, faded, some water-damaged, each one of a child, some sleeping, some staring straight into the lens. Luke stopped at the 4th one. That's Button, he whispered. He touched the image. Just his finger, barely a breath. The boy had wide eyes and a plush toy clutched to his chest. Shaw quietly marked the back. We're working to identify them all. Luke nodded. Start with him. The day before the trial, Luke asked William for a ride. To where? William asked. You'll see. They drove out of town, past the edge of the old park, toward the woods behind the grocery store. The one place William had avoided for years. But Luke knew. He knew the path. He led William behind the trees, past frostbitten grass and forgotten fences, to a clearing, and there, beneath a tangle of ivy, stood the rusted shell of the original vending machine. Not the one that had jammed, the one from before, the one Stokes had first used. I buried something here, Luke said quietly, before I escaped. William knelt beside him. Do you remember where? Luke pointed. They dug together slowly, gently, until they struck something hard. Tin book. William lifted it from the soil. It was dented, sealed with tape. Luke peeled it open. Inside, a photo of him and William at the lake, age 9. A small dragon figurine, the kind from the vending machines. A crumpled note. If I forget, this is me. William stared at it. Then at Luke. You never forgot. Luke shook his head. But I almost did. The courtroom was cold. The kind of cold that seeps into your joints. Luke sat with his hands clasped tightly in his lap. Back straight. Eyes forward. Stokes was there too. Older. Smaller than Luke remembered. He didn't look at him. Not once. Luke took the stand. He didn't tremble. His voice wavered once, but only once. And then it held. He told the truth. Not the whole of it. Just enough. The crawl space. The rules. The silence. And the door that one day wasn't locked anymore. When he finished, the room was still. Not even the judge spoke right away. Outside, cameras flashed. Luke didn't speak to them. He walked straight to the car, pulled his hood over his head, and exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. William started the engine. Neither of them said a word for the first few minutes. Then Luke whispered, "Do you think he heard me?" William glanced at him. "Who?" "The boy inside me. The one who thought he'd never get out." William didn't answer right away. He turned down a quieter road, let the silence wrap around them, then said, "I think he was listening the whole time." Luke didn't cry, but he leaned his head against the window, and he didn't look away from the trees passing by. Each one still standing. Each one still growing. Spring came quietly, with soft rains and trembling blossoms pushing through soil that had once seemed frozen forever. Luke didn't ask about the verdict. He didn't need to. Stokes had pleaded guilty to avoid a trial. 7 counts of abduction. 3 survivors found. 2 still unidentified. And 1 boy, Luke, whose voice had ended it. He hadn't wanted celebration. He didn't want applause. Just distance and time. In April, the tree Luke planted finally broke the surface. A single sprout, fragile and crooked, reaching toward the sun. He crouched beside it one morning, fingertips brushing the tiny green leaf like it might vanish. William stood at the kitchen window watching. That tree was more than growth. It was proof. Luke started school again. Online at first. Then, when he felt ready, in person. He didn't tell the other students his story. He didn't have to. Some of them probably knew anyway. The town was small, and rumors had a way of lingering. But no one said anything. No one pointed. No one asked. And for that, William was endlessly grateful. Some days were hard. Luke still flinched at loud noises. Still woke gasping from dreams he didn't remember. Still sat too long in closets when things felt too big. But now he talked about it. Now he stayed. They built a small garden behind the house. Luke's idea. He said he wanted something to care for that needed time. Each plant had a name. The basil was Button. The rosemary? Isaac. 1 tomato vine, just beginning to curl toward its support. He named me. William laughed when he heard that. Luke smiled. "I think I want to keep growing," he said. On the anniversary of his return, they opened the shoebox. Together, they went through each note, each photo, each piece of his history. When they got to the packet of seeds labeled home, Luke held it up. "I want to plant this one today," he said. Now. They dug a small hole at the edge of the garden, pressed the seed deep into the earth, covered it, watered it, didn't speak. When they stood, Luke said quietly, "You were right." "About what?" "I wasn't broken, just buried." William turned to him, eyes full, heart full, and whispered, "You came back." That night they sat on the porch. No lights. Just stars. Just the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. The kind that says, "You're safe now." And in the distance, behind them, the garden held the first green of a future still unfolding. Some stories don't end with a door slamming shut. They end with a door left gently open, just enough for light to come through. Luke never reclaimed the years he lost, but he built something new in their place. A garden, a voice, a life. It didn't happen all at once. Healing never does. It came in pieces, in early mornings with tea and quiet, in notebooks filled with crooked handwriting, in every small decision to stay. The boy who was taken came home not because he was rescued by sirens or headlines, but because he never stopped trying to be found, because someone kept looking, because someone remembered his voice, even when the world forgot his name. And in the backyard of a quiet house, a single tree rises from the earth, not tall yet, not strong yet, but alive. Alive because it was buried, but not lost. Like Luke, the seed was always there. It just needed someone to wait for it. And when the time came, to listen. Now, when the wind passes through the garden, it hums. Not a song of sorrow, a song of return. A song that says, "I was gone, but I came back, and I'm still growing."